Hey everybody, welcome to the October webinar in what used to be called my Childless Chats Over Cocktails, and then I took the cocktails part out because none of my guests wanted to drink cocktails with me. And now I have two guests who did show up with drinks, and I'm the only one without one. So I'm very excited today to be talking to Sadie and Carrie, and we are going to be talking all about toxic positivity. And when this was actually a recommended topic by someone who attends the childless support circles that I do, requested this topic, which is one that I love. And I wasn't sure if people would know what I was talking about when I said toxic positivity. And then in my stories last week, I asked you guys what some of the comments you had gotten around your childlessness and infertility that fit into that category of being toxic positivity. And you guys definitely knew what I was talking about, because I had to actually just delete the question because there were so many. I think I got over 100 responses.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't keep up on them. And so I'm sorry if I didn't repost yours. I got overwhelmed, but you guys definitely have been hearing this throughout your experiences. So I'm really glad that we're doing this topic. It's one that I don't see talked about enough. So very excited. So to get started, I'm going to have Sadie and Carrie introduce themselves, but while they're doing that, I would love for you guys in the chat box to tell us where you're joining from. And if you are drinking something, you can tell us what it is. But would love to see where you guys are coming from, and feel free throughout the hour to use that chat box to talk with each other if you would like to have a side conversation going there. We also have a Q&A box, so we will be taking questions for Sadie and Carrie for the last 15 minutes. So if you guys want to, you can add those anytime. It doesn't have to be at the end. So you can add your questions there. And yeah, with that, we'll get started. It looks like we've got someone from Belgium, somebody from Atlanta, Georgia. I lived in Atlanta for a year and I love it there, drinking hot chocolate. Someone from South Beach, Oregon, East London, Alabama, Palo Alto, California, Birmingham, Phoenix. Oh, you guys are coming from all over. Massachusetts, New York, Finland, Seattle, Sweden. Oh my gosh. Okay, we've got people from all over. Glasgow. Wow. Oh my gosh. All right. This is amazing. So it is great to see all you in the chat here, and thank you for letting us know where you're joining from. So for those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name's Katie. I run Chasing Creation, and I am child-free after infertility. And I host these monthly as a way to talk to different amazing people all about topics related to being childless. So I am going to first turn over to Sadie. Sadie, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about the work that you do in the child-free, childless community and how people can connect with you.
Sure. Thank you. So hi, my name is Sadie, and I'm from This Curious Life Coaching, and I'm child-free by choice myself, but I do a lot of work with women who are trying to conceive, who are childless by circumstance, as well as being child-free by choice. So I find that a lot of what unites us is, or like, I appreciate what there's a difference in circumstance. What I think unites us is seeking a female identity outside of motherhood. So a lot of the work that I do is around helping women to discover who they are once we take off and shed away all those layers of expectation that society put on us, family, friends, social media, all that stuff that gets layered on. If we strip all that away, who are we underneath? So I support women to find that empowerment for themselves, and then to kind of see the world from a point of view of being curious about it, hence the curious life bit, to discover more about themselves, more about the world and their place in it. So curiosity is one of my values, one of my superpowers, along with intuition and empathy. I identify as being highly sensitive, and for a long time that was something for myself that was kind of tucked away. So yeah, you can find me online as This Curious Life Coaching. I'm on Instagram as curiously_Sadie, and anything kind of cats, witchy, spirituality, tarot, that kind of stuff, then I'm in there. I'm digging in, definitely.
Love it. Well, welcome, Sadie. Your account is one of my favorites, and
Thank you.
I have attended some of Sadie's. Well, she does one-on-one coaching. She also has some really cool ways that you can get involved in some events that she does. So I went to her workshop on the goddess Lilith, which was amazing. So highly recommend that. And then she also holds moon circles, which I attended her last one, which was for it was at noon for me. So I did it on my lunch break, but it was fantastic anyway. And just really, really enjoy your events that you host. So welcome, excited to have you here. And Carrie, you are one of my favorite voices in the infertility community. So tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are, and how people can get in touch with you.
I'm Carrie from Blooming with Care. You can find me at bloomingwithcare.com, and I'm really active on Instagram at Blooming with Care. And I am a goals life coach for people dealing with the side effects of infertility, because I feel like the time when we're trying to have a baby, it can be fun until it's not. And it personally for me took over a lot of my life, and I lost kind of who I was during that time. And so I like to create goals for women during that specific time of their life that are technically out of the fertility world. But as we all know, everything comes back to our fertility when we're trying to have a baby. So it essentially comes back to it. But I really like to try to focus on things outside of that part, as I'm not a doctor and I can't get or keep you pregnant. I've been asked, and it's important to not be able to lose yourself in that whole difficult time. So I like to help women create goals during that. I have an upcoming webinar on October 22nd. If you want to get into that, it's free, and it's going to be just like a little bit of my coaching. You're going to get some like PDFs of the curriculum that I've developed for my coaching, and you'll be able to walk away with like goals that you can work on yourself. And I love goals. I think it's a huge part of our lives. And as an adult, how often do we make these goals? As a kid, I made tons of goals, but as an adult, I really fell off that wagon. So I really like to help empower women and know that you're worthy with or without a child. And even on the pathway to motherhood, you're still worthy in that what can be a really difficult time. And I like to show up for those women that are dealing with that, because I didn't have a ton of people with experience show up for me. I had people show up, but not a lot of people that knew what I was going through. And I want to be there for those women. So come check me out. And I feel so honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that you're here. And one of the things I love most about your account is that while you are working with women, a lot of the women that you work with are still trying to conceive, that you don't talk about it in terms of here's how to get pregnant. Like I see some infertility coaches that are like, I'll teach you how to think positively and what to eat, and I'll get you pregnant. And it's like, okay.
Nope. And that's why I like to clarify, because people
Not
ask
all.
me, no. Like,
well, and that's what I love, is that you focus a lot on your identity outside of
yes,
of motherhood. And for those of us who try infertility, doesn't work out, we transition then to being a childless. It is just really helpful to have a voice that is supporting you, but it's not tied to your outcome. So,
and I feel like on the flip side of that, if you do become a mother, you still want to have something else.
Yep.
Not to say that your kid isn't worthy, but like you still need to have yourself.
Yes, and this is a good question, because I think because this is Childless Chats, a lot of people who are joining are probably childless and may not be trying anymore. Some may be still trying, but somebody did ask in the chat if your work is only applicable to those during infertility, or do you also work with women who are childless by circumstance?
So I usually specifically work with women that are still trying. If you want to check out my fertility coaching, you can look at that. I have still worked with women that were mothers after, so it might still be applicable. I think it's what you're comfortable with, because I relate everything back to your fertility. So if that's not something you want to discuss, I'm probably not the coach for you, which is totally okay. But I do try to relate it back to fertility. But I do have one client right now who is not doing it, but we have to kind of work around it, and she's comfortable with that. If you are comfortable with that, absolutely reach out and we can talk about it. But and I do like a free 1-hour chat. If you want to talk about that, I absolutely do that, because I am not for everybody, but I am for a lot of people.
Yes, and check out Sadie as well if you are in that category, because Sadie is child-free by choice, but she works with a lot of women who are childless not by choice, and that may be more in your area. So anyway, we're getting some asks for your contact info. So Carrie, is your Instagram, is it just at Blooming with Care?
Correct. Yeah. At Blooming with Care. I'm very responsive on there. And if you go to my website, bloomingwithcare.com, it gives a total breakdown of actually what I do. So if you maybe don't want to ask me about it, but you want to just look at it, that's also an option as well.
Okay. And I believe, Sadie, yours is curiously_Sadie.
Yeah, had to make it complicated.
No, not at all. Sometimes those are taken.
Very extra.
Okay, so both of those are in the chat box. You guys have asked for them there, so you've got them. You can go check them out afterwards and get acquainted with them. So, all right, so let's go ahead and jump into the questions here. So I'm gonna start by just saying that when I did that Instagram post and asked you guys in the stories what comments you'd heard, so many of those resonated with me because they were comments that I had received about being childless or during the time when I was infertile. And this topic really speaks to me. And I'm really excited that we're having this conversation. So Carrie, my first question for you. Oh, wait, no, I have a poll first. Sorry, you guys, I'm going to do this poll. So before we get started, I'm going to ask you guys, which types of self-care have you practiced in the past month? And there's some options. You can check as many as you've done. I hope you guys are practicing good self-care. So this is just to see where you guys are at. So maybe we'll go ahead, while this is going, I'll go ahead and get chatting with Carrie, and then after this question, we'll come back to the results. So, all right, Carrie, my question for you is, for those who the term toxic positivity may be new for, I just want to start by level setting. So can you give us an overview of kind of like, what do we mean when we talk about toxic positivity? What is it?
Absolutely. So I wrote a blog post on this recently and got a ton of feedback for it. And I was like, oh, this is like a heated thing. Just to give a quick background, I have been trying for a family still currently for 7 years. I've had a miscarriage. I've had a stillborn daughter, and I am currently working with a surrogate. So with that comes a lot of advice from people. And in the beginning, it was really difficult. I'm much better at it now. But this morning, I tried to think of a specific definition for it. And I came up with, I think it's well-meaning. I think people mean well, although I don't think it's a very healthy way to love someone, because I think it comes from love. I think it's well-meaning, but possibly unrealistic and unwanted predictions from friends, family, and randos, those random people you share, and they're like, oh, let me help you. And you're like, oh, I didn't ask for that. I think a big part of it is that people want to fix you. They're not comfortable with your feelings of feeling sad. And for me personally, I felt broken and unworthy, and those aren't things that people want to talk about, but it's the realistic situation. That's what's happening when you're trying for a family, especially in the beginning, because I was like, I will try all your things. But then around year 4, when nothing worked, it was like, I've tried it. And people still wanted to tell you because they want to be a part of your story. They want to be a part of your miracle, which I have a hard time with that word too, of, oh, you'll have a miracle baby. And it's like, I mean, I'm done with miracles. I just want a normal baby at this point. But I feel like people are uncomfortable with those bad emotions. And I say bad because all emotions are valid and worthy. We're humans. We're going to go through all of it. But if somebody asks me, I usually am honest, which in return makes them quite uncomfortable. But I have worked on a lot of self-lovery work, as I like to say. And I'm okay with making people uncomfortable because I'm learning that it has to do more with them than it does me. Your response is on you, buddy. If I say that I'm not sure I'm going to be a mother and you freak out by that, that's on you. I've made peace with it. I think it's exhausting trying to stay positive all the time. And I am a very positive, optimistic person, but that's not a realistic way to be all of the time. And I am a person where you can read what's happening on my face. I'm kind of hard to it's hard to hide what I'm feeling. So if you ask me again, it's probably going to come out as honest, which makes people uncomfortable. And like, I remember when I had my first miscarriage and I went to the doctor trying to get some time off of work, and he was like, you know, actually it's really common. My wife just had one. She's okay. And I am, number one, no longer his patient. I was like, we're done. But it was like, you're not validating my feelings. And not that I've learned that I don't need necessarily someone to validate my feelings, but at some points in your life you do. And that might be maybe a little closer people in your life, but it's not healthy to say that I don't need something. And people want you to be happy and like excited about trying IVF or something. And I mean, we were hopeful in that when we were trying IVF, but I didn't want to be doing IVF. I wanted to have just a baby in a normal situation, but instead I spent thousands and thousands of dollars. And so people have this like high expectation of hope, which again, I've had it in the past. And my husband likes to say, you know, you've been thinking about this for 3 minutes as I'm telling you this. We've been thinking about it for 7 years. So all these like hopeful feelings that you have, we're kind of past that. And we need more like something realistic to hold on to. And I feel like society puts that on women a lot of like, you need to be calm and like, oh, make sure everybody's okay with their feelings. And I am fucking over that. And I'm not here for that. Like again, if you have a hard time dealing with my issues, that's on you. It has nothing to do with me. And making that like step away from that has really helped me with that toxic positivity and knowing that like whatever I feel is okay. But I think that a lot of people get extremely uncomfortable with you not living in this box that they put you in of like, oh, we want you to be happy. And like, you're the one that really gets me is like, we know you're going to be a mother. No, you don't. And you don't know that I don't know that I'm going to be a mother. And that's an okay feeling, but a lot of people are not comfortable with it. And I think it's working through that comfortability of like, are you comfortable with me being uncomfortable, basically?
Yep, totally. I mean, with your experience and everything you've been through, I cannot imagine the kind of comments that you have received, and I know a lot of us that are here have received. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's just so, I think so much of it relates to this disenfranchised grief, which is a term that when I learned about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this just makes so much sense for my experience and what's been happening to me. So if you're not familiar with the term, it's when you have a grief that's not really recognized by society. So that comment of your doctor of like, oh, it's very common. Why are you sad about this? I think that if people have not been through infertility or even grief around something else. I brought up before that when I was younger, I had a friend who got diagnosed with cancer and I didn't handle it well. I didn't know what to do. I basically like kind of stopped calling him. I think I made him dinner one night, but I blew it as a friend completely because I was so uncomfortable with like not knowing what to say, not knowing how to be there, not knowing how to sit with him in that grief, that I just completely blew it. And it wasn't until I went through this experience where I was in such profound grief and saw other people's reaction to it, and that they came back at me with this like trying to cheer me up, and it didn't feel like I was allowed to have room or space for any of my other feelings. It was like,
it makes you feel like bad for having bad feelings, which that's not healthy.
Yeah, then and it makes you question it, like, oh, why am I still sad then? Everyone else thinks I should be really happy about this, or that like I should be more positive, and what's wrong with me if I'm not there? So yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for level setting for us. Before I ask Sadie, I'm going to ask you my follow-up question. But before that, let's check in on our poll. So it looks like almost all of you voted in this. I'm going to share the results. So, you guys are doing pretty good. It looks like almost all of the answers got like at least half of you are doing these in the last month. So good job, you guys. I'm happy about this. So the top two were treating yourself to something special and prioritizing rest and relaxation, making time for exercise, setting healthy boundaries. You guys are doing great with these. So good job. If you found yourself not clicking many of these boxes, maybe think about how you can start making time for some of these things. I know globally, COVID rates are different depending on where you live, but a lot of us are still dealing with a lot of isolation and just, here in the US, the stress of our upcoming election. So you're taking care of yourselves. It is crazy times. So for those of you who said you're doing something else that is self-care, Let us know what those are in the chat box. It looks like one of you said you're journaling, which is awesome. That's a great way to practice self-care. Another is making a commitment to meditate in the past month and meditating twice a day. Wow, good job. That's awesome. All right. So before I ask you the next question, Sadie, I wanted to just check in. I know your perspective is really different from maybe some who are on this call because you are child-free by choice. And so I would assume that, and you can correct me, I would assume maybe there are like times where you get a little bit sad at missing out on things, or maybe not. But how does this relate? Like, do you feel like you've experienced toxic positivity around just not having children? Oh, you're muted. Oh, wow. Okay. Is that unmuting you?
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself to cough and then it wouldn't let me mute back.
Okay, I'm going to change the setting to make sure you can unmute yourself. Sorry about that.
But yeah, so my experience is different because I'm child-free by choice. I've never had to have those conversations of people telling me, as what Carrie was saying, kind of, your time will come, it'll happen for you, and all those kind of things. But instead, for me, it's more around kind of assuming that I'm available for things that mothers wouldn't be, because I'm not doing anything with my time. So surely I must have loads of time just kind of knocking around to do things. Yeah, so my experience is different in that way. But I've had a recent kind of, so I had an operation last year and had a few minor complications out of that, and then discovered that I have quite a large fibroid. I never knew that before when I'm 42 and only just discovered it. So it's kind of made me think that maybe I may have had trouble conceiving if I had ever tried to, and that entered in then that kind of how would I have felt about that as a situation for myself. And I guess sometimes I do, it's more worrying about the future thing, I think, for myself, about who's going to look after me when I'm older and that kind of thing. But again, I think a lot of that comes from because you're told your children will look after you when you're older. That's what they'll do, that's what they're there for. But I think a lot of older people in care homes who haven't seen their kids for years would disagree. And there's lots of people that I know that don't have positive relationships with their parents, so it's no guarantee that that's there either. So that's how I remind myself that it's my situation is different. I'm here by choice. Yes, I still occasionally think what if, but that's never enough of a pull for me to have that sense of longing, to be honest.
Yeah, and I would imagine that maybe you don't get as many like of the toxically positive statements because those are more of a reaction to grief or loss and like the dismissiveness of that. But I'm sure you get a lot of annoying comments about your decision.
Yeah, and a lot of that used to come from, I used to preempt what people would say by saying, no, I haven't got kids. If people would ask, have you got kids? I would say, no, I haven't, I'm too selfish, because it would just be easier to stop the conversation there rather than kind of get into the why, because I didn't really know what my why was when I was younger. I just didn't want to have children, or I hadn't made my mind up, and it was just kind of not something I wanted to discuss with colleagues at work or strangers, or it's kind of, that's always fascinated me as well, how it's okay for complete strangers to ask how many children you've got, and that's such a personal thing. That's always surprised me. But so my experience has been different in that way. I used to preempt and stop those conversations to cut them down. And now that I'm older, no one asks me because obviously they think as an age thing I've kind of left that ship has sailed. So it's I don't have to have those conversations anymore, which again in itself is of interest, that you think we see women of a certain age at a certain time in their life, it's okay to ask them those questions, but you get past that point, then you don't ask them because then it's uncomfortable for whatever reason.
I have heard though that a lot of once you maybe get a little bit older than you are now, that that age demographic of women has said that then you get a lot of questions about grandchildren. Like I
haven't had that one yet. How many grandchildren have I got?
Right, but I think like I can see that once you start getting old, like I'm not there yet either, obviously, but like once you get to a certain age, it shifts, and then you get the questions about grandkids. So it's always the assumption that
and that's what kind of part of my mission is to remove women from that frame of motherhood, and that we can exist outside that, whether we have children or not, we can exist outside of that frame of motherhood.
I feel like it's kind of a boring question, honestly. And that's me coming from with a lot of baggage, but like, who else are you? You know, like, I feel like there's
what have you read lately? What do you like? What do you do for hobbies? Like what? Yeah, get to the interesting stuff. All right, so Sadie, my next question is for you. So Carrie kind of gave us an overview of like, you know, what is toxic positivity? How is that showing up for us? But I want to ask you, because somebody commented on my Instagram post on toxic positivity and said, toxic positivity, are you guys kidding me? So I know there are people out there who are like, okay, this is taking it too far. You guys are being ridiculous, but it is a real thing, you guys. Psychologists are talking about this. It is a real thing. But for those who may be thinking, okay, but is it really that bad? Isn't it nice if someone wants to cheer us up? Isn't being optimistic a good thing? Like, what is it about toxic positivity that is harmful?
For me, it kind of completely discounts someone's lived experience of what they may be feeling, what they may be going through, what they're carrying, and it just kind of wants to move them on from where they are to somewhere in the future where everything is perfect and rosy, and then that means that whoever that other person is who's trying to be positive in that way that isn't helping, it's kind of like you're just railroading where they are now, and you're not honouring where that person is and what they're feeling, what's brought them to that point. It's kind of, it erases it. And whether it's grief or loss or frustration, those feelings are there for a reason. We have those feelings and they serve a purpose, and it's not always clear for us what that purpose is when we're in them. But to try and move through them too quickly and suggest that oh, it's fine, you'll get over it, move on, you'll find something, or it'll work out, kind of stops you being where you are now and moves us through that too fast, which can be dangerous because then you don't allow that healing to happen. And it's it makes lots of assumptions about people as well, and what they may be feeling and what's important for them, to just kind of railroad over with that kind of that positivity. And it's in the spiritual world, you get, I call them the love and light brigade. Like, if anything bad happens, they're the people that are sending thoughts and prayers, and they're the people that don't want people to be angry or to be rude or to show any kind of aggression, because if we're doing that, then it makes people uncomfortable, because you're having to face up to something which isn't right, or which isn't healthy, or it's just in that kind of that negative space. So it's just a really icky way of kind of sidelining people and their emotions. And as Carrie was saying, it's kind of, sometimes it's not that we need to have our emotions validated, but if you tell someone it's fine, get over it, it's not a big deal, you're kind of gaslighting how they feel, and you're kind of saying, look, your feelings are too big, or you're too much. You don't need to feel that way. Why are you making a big fuss over it? It's fine. And it's kind of, again, that's eradicating what we feel. And it's just, I don't like it. It's definitely a thing. And it's definitely a thing that the people who don't recognize it the most, I think, are the people that are most guilty of it, because it's that easy thing to do, of to say everything's fine. Yeah, we'll kind of think positive, and positive things will happen. And there's a whole law of attraction thing which in there as well, and then you get privilege. There's just so much packed in there that it's not a fan, shall we say, of it.
I really like how you said the "you're too much" part, because that comment has like been told to me my whole life. Like, even as a kid, it was like, you're too much. And I used to feel bad for that. And then when I became an adult, it was like, you're not enough. Like, if you can't meet me here, then we shouldn't be around each other. And I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, and it shuts you down from being who you want to be and who you want to express. And it just eradicates a whole half of our being. Like, all this stuff is the nice light stuff that everyone likes, is comfortable with. The rest of it's a bit dark and funky, but that's who we are as well. And if we're just going to discard all of that and say we're only interested in the positive stuff, then you've got to cut away half of who you are. Exactly.
And there's so much things that can happen and get moved on through anger and grief. It can be really motivational, and it can be really inspiring, and it can be creative, and it can be an incredible force for change. But if you're just going to say, no, I'm only interested in light and love and positivity and good vibes only and all that kind of trash, then you're not going to get anywhere.
I feel like I can't nod big enough to like, I'm like, yes, like you're just explaining it so well. And yeah, I'm really loving this. And I think a lot of it too is a reflection of other people's discomfort and how they handle their own grief. And so if they are faced with your loss or your grief or your sadness, it may be a reflection of like, I can't sit with my own feelings around this. And so I definitely am not here to sit through yours because it's going to make me uncomfortable. And so I do feel like, I don't want to say grief is a gift because it is hell to go through, and it might be toxically positive to say that, but I do think that like one of the things that has at least come from my experience around really having profound grief for a few years was that it did, I think, make me more sensitive and more able to show up for other people's grief and to be there with them through their loss and their pain, even if it has nothing to do with what mine look like. Like I am hoping that if I have another friend who comes to me and tells me they have cancer, that I am able to sit with them in a better way than what I did when I was younger. And so I do think that maybe part of that is a reaction to their own ability to handle a complex range of emotions. So I'm loving some of the comments I'm seeing here in the chat, and one of them I specifically want to ask about. So somebody said, I gotta find it. Where is it? I'm a friend learning how to sit lovingly and be safe. And I just want to clarify, so if you could ask in the chat box, does this mean that you are not actually experiencing this, but you attended this webinar to be a better friend? Because if so, I love you so much, and I cannot even cry. We're all going to probably start crying at the thought of this. So, yeah. So if that is true, kudos on you. If you're attending this webinar as someone who's not experiencing this, but just trying to figure out how to support someone you love that is going through it, that is truly incredible. That does not happen. So, okay. Let's see. Someone else said, it's so real. Sometimes when you're desperate, you literally hang on to those positive words, and it's all the more devastating when it does not turn out the way that they said. And I feel
that right there is like the sum of toxic positivity. Like that's it. It's like you want that to happen, and then when it doesn't, you feel like something went wrong, which, you know, maybe it did, but that's also okay. And like that acceptance part is huge. But I mean, for me personally, I felt like I was like letting people down.
Yes.
People, but
yeah, like it's not even about it becomes bigger than just your grief and loss. All of a sudden you like are a failure in other people's eyes, and you let them down because what's wrong with you that you weren't able to get the happy ending you wanted, or that you couldn't manifest this for yourself or whatever. I
remember when my dad, when we were first trying, my dad was like, I really want to be a grandpa. And like my dad and I weren't super close at the time, and we're much closer now. We have a much better relationship. But I remember like it like hurt my heart because I was like, I'm trying, like I want to be a mother. And then I had to have that conversation with him of like, you know what? I want you to be a grandpa too, but like also, can we just like love me for me now? And he was like, of course I feel that way, but I wanted to let you know. And it was like, I get that, but there's a lot to unpack in that comment that still sticks with me.
Well, and I even see it. I was so mad the other day on Instagram. I saw a reproductive endocrinologist. There was a quote that was like something about, I believe, this is paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly, but it's basically like, I believe that if you show up and like with your full self and you diet correctly, like you eat the right things and you believe that it can happen, you can like have what you dream of the most. And I was like, okay, I want to look at your fertility rate clinics because I know that like 60% of women and men are leaving your office without a freaking baby. So can we just ditch the like eat the right food and have some positivity?
Because I did that. I tried all that and it didn't work.
I know. And it literally makes you feel like, oh, I didn't pray enough. I don't pray because I'm not religious, but I didn't pray enough. I didn't manifest it. I wasn't positive. Like that you shame yourself for feeling negative when you're going through the hardest thing you've ever gone through. And then you are shaming yourself because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm making this not happen because I can't stay positive. It is maddening, you guys. I cannot even, I get so.
I feel like honestly in my beginning, first 4 years of trying, like this was a major reason why I went into an undiagnosed depression, because I felt like obviously I wasn't getting what I wanted, but also there was a lot of like, all the things that you're supposed to be trying aren't working. And it was like, oh my God, I've tried it like fourfold. Like this isn't, and it was, I wasn't in a space to be like, I don't like what you're saying. I was like, oh my God, let me try. And it's exhausting.
Yep. Well, that's, you will never see any, good vibes only in my Instagram feed, because I'm all about embracing the dark here too. So we have some other really good comments. So someone said the Love and Light Brigade doesn't just exist in the spiritual community, it totally exists in religion too, but it's more of the prayers and God's will brigade. I roll. Yes. Someone else said good vibes only is indeed trash. Thanks, Sadie. I get the rage every time I see something with the slogan printed on it. Same. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just reading through. We're getting some good comments here. Oh, okay. Yay. So this friend did say that she joined to just be a better friend to her other friend. That is so sweet, you guys. I seriously love you.
That's big. That's big.
Yes, thank you for showing up. You're amazing. Okay, so I've got another poll for you guys. Let me pull it up here. It is asking you, have you experienced toxic positivity related to being childless? So while that's going, we'll jump into our next question. So we've touched on this a little bit, but Carrie, this question is for you. So you mentioned this piece on your blog that you wrote, and if you guys that are watching have not checked that out, go to Blooming with Care. If you just Google search like Blooming with Care toxic positivity, it will come up. But it is, and maybe I can like pull it up and put it in the chat, a link to it, but you guys, it's phenomenal. It's related to this topic exactly. I'm talking about toxic positivity during infertility. So you should go check it out. But what are some examples of how toxic positivity shows up when someone is experiencing infertility or childlessness? I know we touched on this already a little bit, but
I feel like in regards to that, like I can do it. Personally for me, it was like had to do with like responding to people, because especially like at this point in my fertility journey and life in general, I think like age helps as well with me being like, I'm okay with who I am now. But when you get those questions and comments about are you gonna have kids? Do you have kids? I come from a space of like being very honest, and that can definitely make people uncomfortable, but I also specifically try to respond calmly to that. I definitely was in a space for a long time where like I would have this like tude with it, which is super valid in itself, but I know that personally for me, like if someone comes at me with a tude, I'm like, well, I'll show up too. And so, and also as like the teacher in me, I was a teacher for like 10 years, like delivering the way you deliver, it matters. And I think again, being, older, I'm more comfortable with who I am, being like, well, however you feel about what I'm about to say is definitely more on you. But I share my story honestly, we've been trying for 7 years, and and I used to like throw this at people and it would like get them, like it would shut them up immediately, kind of like what Sadie was talking about earlier of like having that like I'm ready for this kind of situation. But now I'm more like open about it, and honestly me being more open about it, of like sharing our story of where we're at, and like we've had miscarriages, we delivered our stillborn daughter last year, like it opens up a lot of space for people to be like, oh my God, me too, which I have to say is way more common than I ever expected. And so me showing up as my honest self gives room for people to do the same. But if they don't do that, which also happens often, I know that a lot of time when I respond, like I'll cry, and I am much more comfortable with myself, like in tears. Like I cry so much more than I ever did after losing our daughter Clementine in May. Like I am much more comfortable with crying, and I cried before that, so this is who I am now. But like it's okay. And letting people know that like if you're not giving me the space to be who I am, like I'm most likely not going to show up for in a way that you like, or even as like a friend in general. And this has honestly helped me really find out who I want in my life. Like there's a lot more of like, well, if I'm going to cry all the time, am I going to be too much for you? Because if I'm too much, you need to step aside. So it's kind of vetted a lot of people in my way because I'm so honest with how I respond. In regards to that, I've set a lot of boundaries with people of like, no, I don't want to talk about that with you. Like we had a friend show up recently that I hadn't seen in like 9 years, and she didn't know our story, and I didn't really want to get into it with her, but I kind of did, and it made her immediately uncomfortable. And she was like, you're not being optimistic enough. And I was like, I don't have to be optimistic. Like, and setting those boundaries pretty clearly, again, comes with me being comfortable with myself. But without that, I feel like I would be how I used to be, of like kind of floating around and not having like these values to hold on to be like, no, this is who I am. And if I make you uncomfortable, I'm okay with that. And I used to be a people pleaser of like, I want to make sure that you're okay with this. And yes, I've tried this. And, we're still trying to have a family, but especially like after trying for 7 years, my husband and I have real boundaries of like, we know we can't do this forever. If we get to this certain point and we don't have children, we're going to move past that. And that makes people uncomfortable. But it's like, guess what? It's not your life. Like, this isn't about you, which I feel like is a very common response of like, well, I want to make myself comfortable because of course I had someone recently tell me, you'd be an amazing mother. Duh. I know I'd be an amazing mother. That's not the topic that we're talking about. I have to get past that if I want to be able to be a mother. And just being, I think it comes back a lot to like me loving myself enough to be like, I don't really care how you feel about this. And I'm not trying to be a bitch about that, but it's just like a simple fact of like, if you can't handle me, then we're probably not meant to be together.
Yeah, no, I think I love all of that. And I think that became really clear to me too, like when you talked about it, kind of like narrowing your circle or helping you kind of like filter out who you give your time and energy to. I'm also like a very open person. I'm extremely emotional. I just live in that world. That is my space. And so I had a really good conversation with my therapist one week where he said, I think part of what you're struggling with is that you want all of your relationships to be at a 10 all the time, because that is where you feel safe. That's where you feel comfortable. You crave that like connection and intimacy with people, and not all of your relationships can be at 10 all the time. And that's something you might need to get okay with, realizing like maybe this person that I want to be really close to, that I feel like I should be really close to, your relationship with them may just stay out of 4. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And that was a really hard thing for me to learn, because I want to feel close to everybody and I want to open up and have the validation and response that I want from them. And so to realize like they can't, maybe some people in my life can't meet me with what I need.
And that's a hard pill to swallow. I feel like.
Yeah, and maybe some of those people, it does mean like, okay, I'm just not putting energy into this, goodbye. But some of them, it might mean like, no, I care about this relationship and I still want to be in it with you, but I have to realize that like, I'm not going to get what I need from you. And so I need to be okay with this being at a 4. And maybe later it will be at an 8, or maybe it will be at a 2. But like that's okay. I don't have to strive for 10s in all my relationships all the time.
I have to say that is like one of the number one things that I coach my clients on, is like being okay with those relationships. Because one of the number one things that my clients deal with, and I have dealt with personally, is like losing friendships. And I feel like we don't really talk about like losing friendships. Like, oh gosh, I read all the books about breakups with like a romantic partner. But with a friendship, it's totally different. You have to like grieve in a different way. And one of my best friends that I had for like 15 years, we're no longer friends anymore. And I had to be okay with that because I was grasping on it into this unhealthy way, but she got pregnant and I didn't. And that really, we couldn't meet each other. Neither of us could give what each other needed. And at the time, of course, I couldn't wrap my head around that. But looking back on it, it's like, no, this was like, it was okay. It's okay. But I wanted our relationship to be a 10 at all times because it was for like 15 years and we were going to college and drinking and doing the like easy things. And then when like real life started happening, it was difficult.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
There's a book I read recently called Olive by Emma Gannon, and it's a woman who's coming to terms with or realizing that she doesn't maybe want to have children, but her friendship group, and it kind of follows them through from late or mid-20s through to their kind of late 30s, and just the dynamics that change around that. And it was probably the first book that I've read that covers that subject of
I've never
friendship
heard of
groups.
that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to do the poll results. It looks like 61% of you said yes, you've received these comments often. 30% said you've had a few comments here and there. 6% said, not that you've really noticed, and 3% said no. So this is definitely something that a lot of you are experiencing. And just, I'm sure you can gather from this discussion that we're having that, you're not alone in this. It is not a reflection on you. This is just something that we have in our culture that we're all trying to navigate through. So I'm loving some of these comments. So somebody said, Carrie, you're so right. People are looking for authenticity and it allows them to be their authentic selves as well. It's so hard to do when we're in the middle of grief. I love your honesty. I also absolutely love what Carrie said at the beginning, that making people uncomfortable says more about them than it does me. So totally agree. And this, I'm so glad someone brought this up because someone said, I suffer from constant chronic pain and get a lot of toxic positivity from people around that. Things like this too shall pass, think positive, don't think about it. It's been 9 years of nonstop pain and yet positive thinking has done fuck all. So I relate to this one very much as someone who has had really severe endometriosis, and while my pain did get better from like 2 really extensive excision surgeries and just removing almost all of my reproductive organs, I still also have some chronic pain. And it is, I think it's just important to emphasize that while, this topic is focused on being childless, there are a lot of people who, in a lot of situations where toxic positivity comes out. I definitely see it a lot in in the endometriosis or like chronic pain communities. There is a lot of dismissal, and I think it's hard for people to believe that you could really be in pain like all the time and still be functioning the way that you are. But also it's just that similar thing where like people don't know what to say to you, because if they can't offer the like, I'm sure you'll get feeling better, or like it's those situations where there's not like where people can't envision a happy ending for you or like a stop to whatever's causing you pain, that they really shut down and are just like, oh shit, I don't know what to say anymore. Cause or that's when those like toxic positivity statements come out, where it's like I had someone say, oh, my friend had endometriosis and she started doing meditation and she was able to like bring that energy in and like just bring the light in and it goes away. And I'm like, okay, well, if the 10 hours I spent between my 2 surgeries in surgery couldn't fix it, I don't know if adding some love and light into my heart will do it. But whatever. So thank you for that comment. Absolutely true. There are a lot of other situations that this toxic positivity comes and intrudes in on you. Let's see. So someone else said, this is so true. Trying to be okay with the fact that some of the people closest to me just can't give me what can't give me what I need in this regard is a really tough task. I think it will free up a lot of headspace for me if I can become okay with it though. I mean, this was probably one of the hardest things I've dealt with the last few years, is trying to get to a place where I'm okay with that. And one thing I found that's really helped a lot is that through me building Chasing Creation and connecting with a different kind of community where I'm getting my needs met around being able to talk about being childless, and the grief that I felt there, and what I'm struggling with and what's happening with me, and then getting an echo of other voices that can say, yeah, I get this too. Like I understand what you're saying and I feel it too. That has been so just healing and helped me move forward. And it's also helped provide an outlet of being in community with other women who understand that then I don't always need it as much from the other people in my life that are just not going to get it no matter how much I want them to. And it helps allow like a safe and healing space for that to take place. So I would definitely encourage you finding some community, whether it's online, attending my childless support circles, meeting other childless women in your community, but finding ways to connect with people who do get it so that you, I don't know, in my case, it made it easier to accept that maybe the people closest to me were not ever going to get it, and that was okay, and I could get those needs met somewhere else.
I think that part is huge. That completely changed my life, was like finding people that was, well, I remember thinking like I would get mad at like families, like see families and be like, I'm so angry. And I felt bad for that. And then once I felt other people had that, I was like, oh, thank God, like I'm okay. Because for a long time, I felt so alone and that was heavy. And everyone's around you getting pregnant and you're like, yay, I'm so happy for you, but I'm gonna go cry in the bathroom real fast and nobody will know.
Yeah.
That was my life for so long. Now I just cry in public and it's like, I'm fine, but I'm sad.
Oh man. All right, so Sadie, I have one more question for you, and then we're gonna move into our questions, which I know we're bumping up against time. I know an hour always ends up feeling too short, but I'll do my best to end on time here. But so Sadie, as I've been like navigating my own grief over the past few years, I have realized that the more that I try to push it away and pretend like it doesn't exist, the harder it is to actually heal that and move forward. So it's kind of counterintuitive, because you feel like if I can just be positive and keep a good attitude and be optimistic, then I can like push my way into that mindset. And I don't think it works like that. So for me, it's been like kind of embracing that grief and loss and that pain, that I could actually process it, give it some attention, and move and start moving past it. And so I attended your workshop. I mentioned your Lilith workshop, and I just felt like her archetype as a goddess really speaks to the importance of tapping into a full range of emotions and experiences that are part of the human experience, even the ones that get labeled as negative. So if you guys, I would highly recommend checking out Sadie's stuff. She does a really good job of capturing, like she said, the light part of life and embracing the dark parts, and how to kind of be okay with both. But so saying goodbye to toxic positivity also means having to sit with those emotions and experiences that we aren't comfortable with, and that may even be excruciatingly painful to deal with. If we can learn to sit with grief and pain, how does that help us in the long run?
Yeah, for me, grief and pain, they're deep things, because they're coming from somewhere that means something to us, whether that we've lost that we wanted, or we've realized that we're never going to have, or that it doesn't always know where that root is because it's just so deep down. And if we're not spending the time to get to know that and get to make friends with that feeling, then it just gets really heavy and really dense and kind of holds us where we are, and it kind of roots us back into a place that we can't move forward from. And it's not to say that we can move forward and be happy and be in kind of light and love and everything's fine, but it's to find some kind of wholeness and self-acceptance of who we are, even with the bits of us that either make ourselves uncomfortable or other people uncomfortable, or that we wish weren't there. So that our hurt, our grief, our pain, our anguish, our frustration, our guilt, our sense of shame, all those things that we don't always like to talk about, they don't go away if we don't talk about them. They stay there, and they can get heavier and call for our attention more, and they kind of come up in they can manifest like a dis-ease in relation to kind of aches in our bodies, headaches, feeling not great, feeling tired. There's so much work now that's done that we hold emotions in our body, and if we don't deal with them, they stay there. And healing needs to happen when you first kind of acknowledge there's something there and you accept it's there, and then you kind of take the time to look at it. So that kind of shadow work that comes with kind of, that isn't light and love, it's the complete opposite. It's like, right, okay, what's the really dark, horrible stuff that I want to get into here? And it can be uncomfortable and it will definitely be painful, but what comes up from it is that sense of acceptance, because you spend the time to look at it and make friends with a part of you that is crying out for attention. And it's, you can't have that sense of wholeness about yourself and feel complete if you're not carrying all those dark bits with you as well. So the Lilith workshop that Katie mentioned is one of kind of the main themes around Lilith, is that you're whole as you are, so you don't need validation from outside of yourself, but you do need to have that acceptance of yourself as you are, and that sense of sovereignty as well, that you don't need anyone else's permission, you don't need anyone else's acceptance, you don't need anyone else to make you whole. You're kind of whole as you are, and you can move forward in that way. So it's kind of, it's not linear either. It kind of doing that healing thing, it's very much kind of, I see it quite a lot on Instagram memes as a kind of a spiral, because you do kind of have to go back through things, and things that you've thought of maybe you've healed will come back around and they'll bite you in a different way. But you can, if you've done the work to understand what it's rooted in, then you can say, right, okay, this is coming from here, and I need to maybe do something like talk about it with someone else who'll just hold space for me, to hear me and to witness me and to see me in the raw, messy state that I am, that I can then kind of make peace with that little bit and then move on further again. So it's not a linear thing, but it lets you move forward in a way that you can do so wholly as yourself, and not kind of feel that you're losing bits of yourself, or that you're just smothering everything in nice light and love, to kind of to paper over the gaps.
Yeah, I love that description so much. And you saying about how if like grief can come and bite you in other situations later on that you weren't expecting. And I have found that to be the case definitely in my life. And I think in being able to really get comfortable and, like you said, kind of befriend those feelings that were really hard to accept, and look at the grief, look at the loss, look at the pain, and actually sit in it for a while, it helped me understand it better, to where now I haven't felt it as deeply in a very long time, and I don't feel it as often, but I do have moments where I'll feel it coming up, and I know better now what I need to do in those moments. So it's like I recognize them in a way I didn't before, where I can say, oh, I'm feeling kind of shit right now. Like I need to take time to myself to maybe go like, read a book. I have like a lot of books that I feel like are helpful on this topic, or do some journaling, or take some time to just go on a walk by myself, or whatever it is that I'm needing at that moment. I feel like I have better tools to kind of understand, like, okay, I recognize this as it's popping up, that this is part of my grief. And it's probably always going to pop up for me. And I'll have other things in my life not related to me being childless or infertility that are going to come up that cause me grief too. And I feel like I'm learning those skills of how to handle it better, and how, like you said, to sit with it, to befriend it, because it is part of life. And so I think that, it is weird to think that you can actually build skills and like tools around grief, but I think that's true. And I think once you can recognize it, you do have a better skill set of okay, like I'm, this brought something up in me that was unexpected, and I'm having a hard moment right now, or a hard day, or a hard week, or whatever. And that means I need to make time for myself in these different ways to really sit with this and think about it. And then that helps it kind of move past. And then you have good days, and then some days you have a shit day again. But it just helps to like accept it as it comes instead of trying to push it out and pretend like it doesn't exist, which it will bite you in other ways. It's going to come up somehow.
And I love, like, Sadie, what you just said was like beautiful. I feel like my heart like opened as you were speaking with that. It just, beautiful words. But I feel like it comes up, and even when you think you've done it, like it's never done. Like
it's always there.
After losing our daughter Clementine, I remember being like, knowing I was okay because I had done so many years of work. But now it's like, I know this is going to come up in so many ways, in surprising ways, in ways I never imagined. And that acceptance is like almost welcoming of it, of like, oh, here we are. I can embrace this in ways that I have tools for, like I've experienced this. And when I don't allow those to come up, it always comes up in an inappropriate way, to where it's like, oh, wow, I haven't dealt with that because now I'm like crying at dinner with, somebody I don't know, to where it's like, oh, sorry, like I need to work on something. So I feel like it is important to embrace it. And I personally, and a lot of people don't like this, I love my grief, because my grief is how I connect with my daughter. And like that part, it's almost like a special gift to me, like you were saying before, of like, I love that part of it. And that's the part of my daughter that I get. And so it's this, one person recently was like, that's so morbid. And I was like, I'm kind of okay with that though. Like, I like that part of it. Like, it makes me feel good. And being okay with that makes it a part of who I am and not this negative thing in my life.
And it's an honoring of that as well, because if you weren't to have that, you'd have to disassociate yourself with that whole period of your life and with her, because you can't just have one side of it. There has to be the both sides of it. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to say, well, okay, I'm going to accept this whole as it is and honor it for what it is and for what it teaches me, and carry it with me as I carry everything else.
And I love that. And a lot of people are not in love with that, but it's like, again, that's on you. That's not on me.
So I just want to recognize we are a little bit past, or a few minutes over here. Do you guys have a few minutes to do a question, or do you have a hard stop? Okay. So somebody asked, this is a good one, what do I do if I'm the one being toxically positive?
Ooh, good question. Well, first of all, thank you for asking that question, because I feel like that you recognizing that is the first step in acknowledging that this is happening. And just kind of like, I feel like personally, like being aware that you're doing that. And I mean, one of the best things I think people can say is, I don't know what to say. Like, saying I don't know what to say is like, I'm not trying to fix anything, but like, I don't know what to say and I'm here for you. And I mean, coming from our grief, I always appreciated when people like had specific things to do, like, hey, I'm bringing you a casserole, or hey, I'm taking your dog for a walk, or I'm picking up your mail, or, 1 week we forgot to take the recycling out. So somebody was like, for the next 2 weeks, I'm just gonna come and take your recycling out. So like finding specific things to help with someone's grief. Obviously our grief was a little bit different, but grief is grief. But also I think a huge part of acknowledging that you might see this in yourself is going to open up so many doors for you.
Yeah. Knowing that you're doing that, and then kind of recognizing that it's not something that's going to be helpful or healthy for someone, then instead it's kind of allowing that person to validate their feelings and being part of that validation by just being there for them instead, to listen and kind of remove your needs almost from that situation. Say, like, what can I do for you right now? What do you need from me? How can I help you? Is it going away? Is it letting you cry? Is it getting you food, getting you drink? What is it that you need? Yeah.
And recognizing that it may just be, it may just be your presence is enough, right? So just, I think, Carrie, I've used that line a lot where I've said, I'm sorry if I'm being quiet. I'm trying to just listen and hold space for you. I'm not sure what to say, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm sitting with you in this.
Huge. Like, yeah. I mean, even when someone still says this to me now, I'm like, well, then you're doing all the right things. Like, yeah. And a lot of times I don't know what I need. And I feel like a lot of people experiencing grief don't, especially if it's like your first time with some like big grief, you don't know what you need. So it's just nice to show up with like specific things. And there are a ton of resources around that. But like, acknowledging that you might not know how to handle it makes me feel comfortable being like, well, I don't know how to handle it. I remember when one of my best friends came over when we had just lost Clementine, and she was like, I don't know what to say. And I was like, I don't either. And she was like, oh, thank God. And it was like, cool. Like, we're both on the same page.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like I misinterpreted her question. So she wrote back and said, she's being toxically positive to herself about her own situation. So when does positive thinking become toxic?
Good question.
Yeah, I think it's resisting switching off from what you're feeling. So if you're being toxically positive to yourself because you're kind of gaslighting yourself and saying you should be able to think your way out of this, or if you're more positive this will happen, is to kind of spot when that happens and just kind of see what is bubbling up that you're pushing back down, and instead allow yourself to sit with it and see what comes up and how does it feel, and kind of lean into that feeling uncomfortable. And sometimes that needs a really big messy cry. Sometimes it needs someone to talk to, sometimes it needs a run or something else that's kind of to get it physically out. But I think it's first of all is stopping that process of slipping into it's fine, I'll just do this, everything will be okay, and going, well, no, hang on, what is it I'm feeling? And if I sit with it and just look at it, what does it turn into?
I like the idea of like, when I first started like exploring my feelings, I would write it down. And then a lot of times when I write it down, I would be like, well, I don't feel comfortable looking at that. And I would burn it to be like, because I also love burning so many things.
Great release.
It's like you physically see it disappear in front of your eyes. And it doesn't mean it's going to go away, because there are many things I rewrite and reburn. But a lot of times with me, and I know that like me being a writer is part of that, but I like to put it on paper to see it. And I remember even in the beginning, I was like, well, I'm not going to write that because I don't want this to be on paper. And then once I gave myself the like release of, well, you're going to burn it anyways, no one is going to see this. It gave me kind of like permission to be like, fuck that fucking family for having all those kids. And we've been trying so hard, because those were super shameful feelings. And I think a lot of feelings in not having children, or like trying for children and it not being successful, it's a shameful situation. And I had jealous and envy, and those emotions aren't really welcomed, but they were absolutely real and completely valid. So I would like secretly write them and be like, no one will ever know. And then once I started talking to people and connecting with others, I was like, oh God, you feel that too? Well, I burned that piece of paper like 9 times. So like kind of getting it out and being like, this is really what's happening. And if you don't want anyone to see it, burn it.
All right. Well, this has been such a great discussion. I feel like I could easily spend another hour talking with you guys. This has just been really great. I am wondering, because we do have a couple questions we didn't get to, if maybe sometime like early next week, if we could, if you guys would be willing to answer them in your Instagram stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love to. Yeah, definitely.
I'll tag you guys in stories. You guys can do some quick videos and just tag me in them, and I can repost them to my account too. And we'll keep the conversation going a little bit and get to some of your questions that we didn't have time for. So thank you guys for joining, especially Carrie and Sadie. You guys are both so amazing. And if you guys are needing extra support, if you feel yourselves, you know, being drawn to doing some one-on-one coaching or seeing what other offerings these guys have, please check them out. As you can see, they're both really amazing. And I, you know, invited you here because I love your perspectives and can only imagine what benefit people would get from working with you deeper. So, so thank you guys so much. Just a couple of quick announcements from my work. So I am probably going to be putting these on hold for a couple of months, because I am going to be doing a Childless Collective Summit, which Sadie came up with my tagline, Life Beyond Expectations. I love it. So I am a one-man band over here coordinating the whole summit by myself, and it's going to be massive. I'm hoping to have a ton of speakers and just have it be really fabulous. So I'm going to be putting these on hiatus for a few months to focus on that. But I will still be doing my childless support circles every month. October sold out, but we have a few spots left for November and December. And if those keep getting sold out like they have been, I'll eventually start offering another option each month for you guys. But if that's a way, if you guys want kind of a smaller, more intimate space to work through some of this stuff, I limit those to 10 women. And it just provides space to talk through different topics every month. So, and then just before we go, Sadie, can you remind us where we can find you?
So I'm This Curious Life Coaching online, curiously_Sadie on Instagram, and I do have a Lilith workshop coming up on the 5th of November if that's something that is of interest. There's details on my website for that.
Awesome. And Carrie, remind us where we can find you.
bloomingwithcare.com. You can find about my coaching, my blog, and I'm starting to make like self-lovery women's products that I'm really enjoying to remind us that we're all worthy no matter what stage of life we're in. And I'm always on Instagram at bloomingwithcare.
Awesome. Well, I love you both. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for all of you who joined at home. When I first started these, we didn't have a lot of people joining live, and it has been so much fun to see your reactions in the polls, to get some chat going, and to feel your presence here, even though we don't see you guys. It's really fun to know that you're there and to get your feedback live as we're doing this. So thank you to all of you who joined live, and looking forward to seeing you soon. So thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.